Badlands. Explain those Badlands. That's a hell of a name.
All right. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Happy Friday. Welcome to Why We Vote, the show all about election fraud and everything else. How you doing, Ashe?
I'm well.
You're well.
I
wish I was well.
I know. I remembered while the intro was playing that you were sick, which explains your lack of enthusiasm about my story. So
yeah,
and you spent the morning with Chris Paul, so it's to be expected.
That's not so bad. So this just to give you guys a heads up, this is a pre-record. And yeah, as soon as I was done with the daily, I went and took a power nap, and then I woke back up, and here I am, and we're going to power through this. Not feeling great, but that's okay. We'll get through it. Let's go ahead. We've got a special show. I'm excited about this show now that the RICO case, the RICO Fulton case is gone. We've got a lot to talk about, and we got a very special guest joining us tonight. But before we get into that, let's get a word from our sponsors, guys. Empower your right to disconnect with silent Faraday cages. In a world where tech never sleeps, our mission is to keep you safe, private, and healthy. Our patented technology shields your devices from hacking, tracking, and EMF radiation, giving you autonomy over your digital life. Disconnecting sparks creativity, strengthens relationships, and brings peace of mind. With Silent, you get effortless gear built with integrity, always staying one step ahead to protect your data and your security. Choose Silent and reclaim your freedom to disconnect by visiting badlandsmedia.tv/Faraday and use promo code Badlands to snag your 10% discount. Again, that's badlandsmedia.tv/Faraday, promo code Badlands. All right. Cool. And then Ashe, I will let you tell them about Tamarac Gardens.
Absolutely. Are you looking for a better alternative to over-the-counter drugstore medications? Tamarac Garden began from a parent's desperate need for safe and effective options for their kids. They were tired of toxic chemicals. Taking matters into their own hands, they began crafting medicine from weeds, wildflowers, and herbs, the original time-tested healers that modern medicine can't match. Packed with antiviral herbs to boost immunity and fight illness, Tamarac Garden has, for a limited time, their elderberry and rosehip syrup kit available. Not only is it delicious, so you'll have no more battles with your kids, but it's easy to make, and it will keep you and your family healthy all fall and winter. I need to get another one because I made the elderberry syrup. It is very effective, and my family had sickness right around the time we were doing Cocoa Beach, and the whole thing's gone. So I need to make another one because it really does work, and it's delicious too. We're also introducing Tamarac's new baby line, clean, non-toxic, gentle for newborns and for moms. Relieves cradle cap, diaper rash, stretch marks, and postpartum pain. Visit Tamarac Garden today and use promo code Badlands for $10 off orders over $50. Remember to eat your weeds, tamaracgarden.com, promo code Badlands. And they have tinctures, they have teas, they have salves that you can use for different ailments. Really, really great stuff. Big fan of Tamarac Garden.
Yes, I am actually the Christy made the elderberry tea for me, and I've drank it each night before I go to bed, and it's really good. It's delicious, and it's helped out. And then I take I think it's an elderberry tincture. I think it's elderberry.
The super immune one.
Yes,
this one right
I told
here.
Christy it tastes really good, but it reminds me of like how my grandma smells.
Oh,
like if you put
weird.
that, I don't know, whatever.
Brian's sick, and yes. You remember that cold medicine commercial that was like the guy's head floated away like a balloon, and it was like, I'm foggy, disconnected. That's you. If you have a cough, you should take a Lung Love.
I do,
and you should put the Mullen everything on your chest too. That's what I would do if you were in my house and you were sick.
Well, even if my head is floating away, our guest tonight is a Georgia rock star that I've written about pretty extensively. Georgia is probably the one thing I've written about more than any other state in terms of election fraud. And her case specifically down in Coffee County, Georgia, she was lumped up into the RICO case. And now that that's gone, we had Harrison Floyd on last week, and now we've got Cathy Latham joining us tonight. Hey. Cathy, how are you doing?
Oh, I'm doing
Congratulations.
Great. Thank you.
Huge congratulations. So first,
I'm so excited.
yeah, let's start off with how you're feeling after having that pardon or having it dismissed. Excuse me, not the pardon, but
Yes.
having it dismissed.
It was surreal. My lawyer called me, and you could tell he was excited and crying. His wife was in the background yelling and crying, and they were telling me it had been dismissed and all of this. And it's the day before Thanksgiving, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm free. Thanksgiving miracle, because I had 88 years hanging over my neck. So yeah, because I turned down the plea bargain. So they were going to throw me in prison for 88 years is what they told my lawyer. So
What did they offer you on a plea?
oh gosh, they wanted me to plead guilty to RICO because that was really important. I was the only key that linked the entire RICO case together. So they wanted me to plead guilty to RICO. Then, because I was a teacher, they wanted to punish me with a 5-page paper on democracy. And I told my lawyer, I went, I don't think I can write a page on democracy. I could write a page on how a democracy would kill this country, but not on a democracy. And then there was a $5,000 fine, and I had to write a letter of apology to the Georgia voters. And I did not realize I had said this to my lawyer until he said he told Pete Scandalakis what I said. But when he told me the whole conditions of the plea bargain, I went, hell no, I wasn't going to do that. And but and I told him from the get-go, I said, until they could show me in black and white what I had broken the law, I was not doing anything because number one, I hadn't done anything wrong. Number two, I wasn't going to hurt my Christian testimony. And number three, I wasn't going to betray my country by taking a plea deal out. And, just, it wasn't right. So,
and if you had pled guilty to RICO, that would be, an admission that there was a RICO, which there was not. And
yes.
so that would have set up, a whole bunch of other stuff for them. So good on you for not, for it would have been much more comfortable for you to take the plea, right? Personal circumstances, but it sounds like you couldn't live with yourself if you did that. And I get that. I wouldn't have been able to either. It is, one of the things that a lot of people don't realize, you think about like, what kind of remedies can a court order? It is a blue sky. They can do whatever. The courts have discretion to order all sorts and manners of punishment. You're describing, write a 5-page paper on democracy. There was a case when I was researching this back for my case. There was a case where the judge made the lawyers write sentences, like not on a chalkboard, but they had to write sentences. The courts can order. It's kind of wild when you think about it too hard.
So, by the way, I'm still working on that paper. I'm going to get it published. It'll be a love letter to Nathan Wade. So
that's awesome. Cause and I'm glad to hear, that a democracy that you would have written about a democracy killing this country. Cause we talk about all the time. We hate it when people say it's about democracy because we are not a democracy.
I know. I want to put the whole world or the whole country in my classroom where I used to teach and just kind of tell them why we are not a democracy. So,
So let's go back to the beginning on your story and where it began. So you were the GOP chair for Coffee County, correct?
Mm-hmm. I started off there in this scenario. That's where I started, was at the chair. And then before the election cycle started, I was chosen to be or elected to be on the executive committee. I was the under 80,000 chair for the party, which meant I was the caucus chair for the rural counties of Georgia. So I had 128 counties under me at that time. So my job was to, on the executive committee, represent all the rural counties and get information out to them, et cetera. So that's where I started on this. Was at that point.
And so, Coffee County is not notorious, but it's well known in the Georgia case because there was a lot of issues in both the 2020 election, the 2020 primary election, and the 2020 runoff election.
Oh, yes. And I was there the entire time.
And, I covered the Curling v. Raffensperger trial in Atlanta 2 years ago. And one of the things that was glaringly obvious listening to them litigate that case was that they were going to use Coffee County kind of as a scapegoat to say that Donald Trump stole the 2024 election because of the access that they were able to get through. I think it was through Misty Hampton, but it might have been through you when those. But we'll get into that.
Yeah.
So let's go back to the beginning and the primary election. There was an issue that you guys were having there with your voting machines, and tell us that story.
Well, we were having problems with the ICC, just at the time we did not know it was QR code failure. This was a whole new machine. And believe me, the Secretary of State had set out to try to, in my opinion, now that I look back, try to brainwash everybody. He went on Zoom calls, etc., with all the county chairs, with all the GOP people, all this kind of stuff, talking up the system, trying to get us to know what the system was about, etc. So, that kind of scenario was set up. Then we had this primary happen, and this machine was an utter failure, just constantly rejecting ballots. And there's this process they had to go through that when there was a ballot rejection or a jam or whatever they were calling it in June, that you had to count down so many ballots, pull them out, and then restart the machine, or you had to clear it out and redo the entire batch. And I mean, this went on and on and on for hours, to the point where even the Dominion Tech at that point had no idea what was going on. So finally, Misty called around to Cook County. She called around to several counties, and Cook County had an extra machine. So they sent a police officer with lights to go get the machine so that they could the next morning start running the rest of the ballots. And from what I understand, that machine jammed up just as much as the other, but not quite as bad. So they had to go borrow a machine. So in June, they started having problems with these rejections. But at this point, it was still COVID, everybody with masks, everybody distancing, etc. So that was a scenario in June with what happened.
Now, you had reached out to the Secretary of State's office and made them aware of this problem that you were having. And what was their response to that?
Well, I did it on behalf of the Board of Elections. From what I understand, they weren't getting any help. And since I had a relationship as a party relationship with Ravensburger, I said, well, let me try. So I reached out to him on text messaging, phone calls, and even a Zoom call with Gabe Sterling, and told them the problems we were having. And they told me to rest assured they would handle the problem. They would take care of it and make sure that the November election was seamless, etc., for the county.
Now, and correct me if I'm wrong on this, but didn't they ultimately come back and tell you that you guys were going to be on the hook for a whole new machine?
Yes. When I went into the office, it was either election day or the day before the election. I don't remember exactly which day, and said, did they take care of it? That's when I was informed by both election workers, that was Misty and her helper, that, oh yeah, they would handle it, but this county would have to buy a whole new machine for $25,000.
And, in a small county like Coffee County, that's a pretty big expenditure.
That was probably the entire budget.
Yeah. So you have these brand new machines, because this is, June of 2020, right? Mm-hmm. And these machines are less than a year old at that point. I think they were integrated in June of 2019, I believe. So yes. These are less than a year old, and you're having catastrophic failures already. And their excuse to you is, or they're not their excuse, but their remedy is, you're going to have to expend $25,000 and buy a whole brand new machine.
Yes.
So with the failures of the machine, did you ever get an answer from the vendor or from the Secretary of State or from, whatever Gabe Sterling is doing now? Did you No. So you're on the hook for a new machine. How does this connect back to the county has with the vendor for the machines? And that's my first question. The second question is, did they offer you anything other than the 20? So one of the things we've seen in other jurisdictions is, well, you have to buy all these new machines, but if you sign up for this managed service contract, we'll give you the machine, but you're on the hook to work with us for 10 years. Did you get anything like that in this
I
exchange?
believe that was the state contract. I mean,
Okay.
at the time, now this becomes a very blurred issue. Whose machines are they? Are they the county's machines, or do they belong to the state? And I know for a fact what the answer is to that later. But at this moment in time, we're like, this machine is faulty. It should still be under warranty, et cetera, et cetera. And they should have replaced it. And that is one of the things that I've always wondered. Why did they not replace it? And I mean, if they had just replaced it, may not have been a problem. Who knows?
Yeah. And keep in mind, this is the primary. So this is before anything in the November 3rd, 2020 election. So
Correct.
this is, this isn't like election conspiracy and all, that other stuff that's going on there.
I also just to go back to what you were talking about with Raffensperger going around the state, doing all the Zoom calls, talking to all the different constituents and trying to sell this election system as, this is the best. We have the best. We get gold standard here. That dynamic is we see repeated around the country in the run up to 2020, and then certainly in the wake of 2020, defending the system. And that I just, for the audience, want to point out is change management. There is an analysis behind the scenes that identifies the very important audiences, the clerks, the commissioner, people with statutory authority for funding, the people that you need to handle in order to sell this. And so hearing that is that's the method that the public-private partnership uses to handle all the public officials. As conspiracy theorists, Brian literally is inside the tinfoil studio right now.
Well, even before this, 2 years prior to this, Secretary of State Kemp went across the state selling this system, and he came to Coffee County. And I was there, and I questioned him about it. And this was going to solve all of Georgia's problems. It produced a paper ballot, and then the paper ballot gets scanned, and we would have this magnificent paper trail, where we didn't have it before, and all this kind of stuff. So this was a 2-year sales pitch that went on
by Republicans. Same here in Colorado. Drink, Brian.
I was just about to say drink. I knew it was coming. You were going to do in the last segment.
We got all mail-in ballots from Republican Secretary of State, and we got machine mandates from Republican Secretary of State. And back in the second Obama term, Democrats were screaming about the machines and the landscape and all of that. They shut up around 2016. Weird, right? And then we got kill chain in 2019. Right. It's a circus we're watching.
Yes.
Wasn't Kill Chain? Didn't they have that one anomalous machine? Wasn't that in Georgia too?
Yes.
Kill Chain? That was in Georgia, right? Yeah, that just popped into my head. So
in fact, I copied that entire movie and turned it in part of my discovery.
Nice.
So
good. Yeah, because these machines were so dangerous until it was Donald Trump that was on the victim end of the machines. And then all of a sudden, these are the best machines ever. And Chris Krebs, the environmental lawyer, said most secure election ever. Yeah, the gold standard. Exactly. Yeah. And Raffensperger, I know Colorado does as well, but Raffensperger says all the time that Georgia is the gold standard in elections. It is far from. It's like what's the fake gold called? It's the fake gold standard.
Fool's gold?
Not fool's gold. There's an actual name for it, but fool's gold.
It's alchemy. It's alchemy, that creation of that fake gold. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just to close off my thought on that, the Republicans selling the change management effort to sell this system to all of the different constituents that need to be sold, right? You don't necessarily have to sell the people, but you need to sell the people that the people are going to talk to, right? So you need to get all them handled. That, Cathy, is a RICO.
Yes. Well, and here's interesting that is all the texts sent out, emails and texts sent out later on by the consultants hired by Raffensperger to come to us. They wanted us to post how easy it was to vote in the primary, how all this kind of stuff was. They were trying, and they even did it right after the November election, before all the results came in, the people who voted early. They were wanting us to say how easy it was to vote. They wanted the GOP to go out there and start saying all this stuff.
Yeah. So I was a change management consultant. That's called making you into a change champion. They wanted you to be a change champion that would carry the message forward. That's been really successful here. Our clerks here are largely champions. Tina Peters helped with that, right? Because when that happened, anybody that was even thinking about questioning the election stopped. And it was very, very effective. The narrative that they deployed.
It's funny, Ashe, because my original 4-part series on Georgia and the RICO case was called "They're Investigating the Wrong People." The real RICO, I don't remember the exact title, but the real RICO is the state itself.
So many meetings of the minds we have on them. And so if it turns out, and I think we have this evidence, but it hasn't been, submitted in court or whatever in the appropriate forum without all the procedural nonsense and everything. If it turns out that the system is designed for fraud and that the key people with, the kind of subject matter experts, I think of a Gabe Sterling or a Matt Crane, right? And those guys knew about it and then engaged in this effort to handle all of the public officials. Tina Peters is allegedly in prison for 9 years for making one misrepresentation to 3 public officials. Think about if we apply the same standard of justice, the people that peddled the gold standard nonsense, and there's multiple meetings of the minds throughout that we can point to.
Mm-hmm.
So Cathy, walk us forward now. So that was the primary. You had major issues. You get the tabulator from Cook County. We got the text messages between, Raffensperger, Sterling saying, we'll get you squared away. We'll get you squared away. And then dropping on you that you have to pay $25,000 for the new machine. Walk us forward to what happens on November 3rd, 2020 in Coffee County.
Well, on November 3rd, same thing that we had problems with in the primary, just that constant jamming up of ballots. Misty, poor soul, she would sit there and have to run 5 ballots at a time, just hoping, to get them through. Now, by this time, the majority of us in the office are not scared of COVID at this time because you've gone from June now to November, so we're all standing there where we're breathing on each other, looking at everything and stuff. Just cannot figure out what is going on. Now, one of the mistakes I made that night was I went to bed, because I went to bed thinking we won, woke up the next morning and we had lost, because we finally got everything done in Coffee County. We were one of the last counties to turn in. And that was a big stinker. I know that we then had eyes on us because we were one of the, besides Fulton, Gwinnett, and there was another county that was late.
Cobb,
I think.
Yeah. That's where I grew up.
Yeah. And at this point, we didn't know about the Fulton County shutdown, et cetera, because we're just in our little bubble there in Coffee County, no TVs. You have to put your phones away, et cetera. So we have no idea what's going on in Fulton County. But it took us forever to get those ballots ran because we were running, 5 and 10 at a time and constant failure, constant back. And a decision was made at some point to take some of those and wait. We could do a preliminary, get the numbers in and then run those later on, because you had, when the election shuts down on Tuesday, you have until Friday to cure ballots, et cetera, fix whatever needs to be fixed. So
you guys conservative, in some jurisdictions you have months.
Yeah.
That's a fact.
Yeah.
So you guys were you had a video. I don't think it was you. I think it was Misty herself that had
Misty
the video.
and the entire election board. She had the entire election board there.
So let me make sure that this is the right video. Is this the video?
Yes.
Okay. So let's play this video real quick. And this was Misty explaining the adjudication process. I believe this is the video. I'm pulling this up off.
I think it is. Yeah. Where she's talking and stuff.
And
yeah,
I think I want to vote for Jason Shaw. They didn't vote that ballot a while ago. There wasn't nothing there. I think we need to vote for him. And I'm going to complete it. Confirm ballot, save, move to next ballot. Okay. So it pulls up the next ballot that needs to be adjudicated.
So you made a vote for someone where someone did not vote?
I did, didn't I?
And you're the election supervisor?
I'm the election supervisor. I am the person that sits and does the adjudication. Yes, sir.
Go back to the Trump and Biden race and decide, since both are marked, you just count one of them and not count the other. Can you
Let's
decide
see. Yep, sure can.
Wow.
that?
I think I want to vote for Biden. Let's let Biden win this one.
So what you put supersedes whatever.
Uh-huh.
So you,
But I decided this Al, he don't deserve no votes. Let's not let nobody vote for that. And complete. Okay.
Gold
Now
standard.
here's another one.
That's what we got from our discussion the other day.
I don't think any votes need to vote on this ballot. I think this really needs to be just a blank ballot. Complete.
I mean, that video was shocking. That video was absolutely shocking. And nobody at the time in the media paid any attention to that whatsoever. They dismissed us as conspiracy theorists. And it doesn't matter whether or not anything was actually done, in terms of any of the capabilities being utilized. The fact that they exist makes the system utterly compromised. Like it is not a trustworthy system at that point.
And what they'll tell you, the gold standard peddling people, what they'll tell you is, well, there's bipartisan team of observers. And so, that can't happen, even though it's technically possible. There's a bipartisan team. That's a behavioral change. That's trusting, pinky promise. The only time we're ever going into adjudication is when we have a bipartisan team of observers. We have multiple examples of that being false.
Right.
The second thing is they'll say, well, the logs, we have the logs. And if somebody's messing with the elections, the logs, and as we've heard from Phil Davis, that's, not the case. And they wipe the logs, and EMS admin ensures that everybody, no matter who makes the change, you can never know who did it.
Right. And here's one of the things is that in Coffee County, that mindset of, yes, we have bipartisan, we had it. There was a Democrat, there was a Republican, and a neutral person. We worked well together. We trusted each other. And that happened. As we saw on camera, that didn't happen in every county, and especially across the country. We saw adjudication process. We saw, what state was that where they were putting up the white paper up on the window so the observers,
Right.
Michigan, they couldn't watch the adjudication. Adjudication should be open, and there in Coffee County there were windows where you could stand in the lobby and watch the adjudication process. Yeah. So it needs to be fully transparent, and it was in many small counties.
But the reality exists that anybody with the credentials could go into a back room, pull up that interface, and change whatever ballots they wanted to. You're relying on the idea that, well, nobody would ever go into it unless there was a bipartisan team of observers present. And that's stupid. It's stupid to believe that that's the case when we're talking about the most power, the positions of power in our country.
Yes. Yes.
Well, and you're talking about man, I just lost my train of thought here. This is where the sick brain comes in. I don't know. I lost my
foggy, disconnected.
I am foggy and disconnected. Well, so there's so much in this that I have to unpack because I've been covering this for so long. So going back to the 2020 election, where you're having all these ballots rejected and all that. What was the ultimate how did you guys resolve that before we get into the runoff? How did you guys resolve that on election night?
Well, some ballots were set to the side to be done later on. If you couldn't adjudicate them, they couldn't go through. The decision was made to just have a pile of some of those, and they would be ran the next day or whatever. The Dominion tech we had, he was a nice guy, and I just think he was a contract person. He wasn't not January 5th, where we actually had one of the main dudes there, a guy there, and he was trying his best to figure it out. He was doing everything humanly possible to get these through. And we had ballots that it just wouldn't go. And you would look at it and you're like, what's wrong with this? Was there, something on the ballot? We would even examine it. Was there, how some Scantrons in school, and kids believe if they put chapstick on it, it'll run the machine, give them 100 or something. I even as a teacher looked at the ballot to see if somebody had done something that way to it. It was just silly, but that was what we did. We were just trying to get through so we could send in preliminary numbers and, close out the night, knowing that we had, 3 more days to finish out the election, because you had some unicava, you had some ballots that need to be cured, etc. So we knew that there was a 3-day window to finish the election.
I remember what I was going to say now on the last point is that even if the adjudication was on the up and up, you can't verify it. I mean, Garland has been fighting in Georgia to examine the physical paper ballots in Fulton County.
Yes.
And, they tell you, well, you can look at the ballot images. Well, we know that those can be manipulated very easily. And people seem to think, they look at these, elections and how these ballots are processed and everything and think that this should be a very fundamental process, but it never is. And, people, we give people too much credit because most of us, I believe, are good intentioned people. And so we assume the benefit of the doubt to others that they're good intentioned. And in reality, you're talking about control of a $26 trillion economy. And you can't make that assumption. And that's how we get ourselves in the predicament that we're in right now.
That's right. And what is weird, and this will come out later, but there's like this grade book program that acted just like the adjudication process, that I could scan kids' test with my phone, and then I could grade them on my phone. And if there was a problem with it, I could switch answers and stuff. And as long as you looked on the device and even the downloaded scanned papers, I could change the answer and you couldn't see it unless you had the paper copy. And it acted just like the adjudication process in these machines. Same type of, I think, software that they used. So
and in the Misty Hampton video, that's where you see the example that Eric Coomer was bragging about Dominion being capable of using markings that look like authentic human beings, because instead of just filling in the circle perfectly, they put a check mark through it or an X or a squiggly line. And they do this under the excuse that, well, ADA people need to be able to you'd be able to tell it was an ADA person that voted if it was a perfectly filled in bubble. So they need to be able to have a bubble that looks like it was marked by hand. And, that's absurd in and of itself. But go ahead, Ashe.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to the point about, the procedural checks and balances, and they don't even follow the things that they say. So remembering Marilyn Marks being on our show and talking about the ballots in Colorado, she's like, well, I went to court and I got I set the precedent in the state of Colorado that, you're allowed to see the paper ballots. That is it's case law. It's precedent in Colorado. And I'm like, that's great. It's super cool. They won't give them to us. They will only give us ballot images after they've had the opportunity to redact any identifying marks, they say, which, there's a whole bunch of follow-on questions to that assertion, but they're admitting before they give us to them that they may have manipulated them, right? That's the assertion there. And then you can't get the paper. Well, you have to go to court and get it. Okay. So I have to either pay attorneys now to get this basic record from the election, or I can do it myself, but that means I'm now devoting my entire life to this one thing. We're at a significant disadvantage. The people, the local officials, anybody that is oppositional to the state's position is in a real power disadvantage, a very asymmetrical power dynamic. And then, they don't even fight fair there, because they demonize you, character assassinate you, and make the entire public think that you're evil.
That's right. And they can say stuff that are bald-faced lies, in my opinion, and the courts accept it. And all of a sudden you're just sitting there going, what just happened? It's almost like they're never challenged in what they say. So,
and just to the point of always bringing up Colorado, Brian, the very first show I ever went on, very first podcast I ever went on was yours. And we were talking about, I think it might have been the second time I went on your show, that we were talking about the interstate conspiracy to defraud the American people. It is the same. So we're engaging in the same conduct, the same, what I believe is corrupt influence operation conduct across states. That's a RICO. And that is the scale of the crime with regards to our elections is massive. I do have hope that we're getting closer to
Me too.
answers and accountability, actual accountability on it.
President Trump in his Politico article interview the other day said a couple months. Did you hear that? He said a couple months it'll be exposed. We have it all, and it'll be exposed in a couple months. So
let the conspirators have one more Christmas.
Yeah,
Is that
there you go.
is that
I like
the plan?
that.
Because Tina Peters didn't get one more Christmas.
I like that. I
Just
like
saying.
that. So, Cathy, let's get into the runoff, because this is where it gets really interesting. And tell us about what happened on the January 5th runoff in Georgia, in Coffee County.
Well, in the January 5th runoff, we end up having 2 Dominion techs now there. And one of them, I don't even know how to say his last name. His first name is Samuel, and it's Chaldes or something like that. And he's there, and he's from Colorado. And they send him down there to help the regular Dominion guy. And lo and behold, what do we have? QR code failure this time. But this time, the Democrat person who is the adjudicator and myself, we're sitting there and we can see the QR code failure on the screen, because by this time we are not scared. We're in a room about the size of a closet. It's Misty, the Democrat, and me. There are a ton of people behind us watching in the windows. And every time there's a ballot failure, we ask to see the ballot. Absolutely every single ballot failure was 3 Republicans, because this runoff had the 2 Senate races and a energy commission. It was Bubba McDonald and David Perdue and Kelly Loeffler. And every QR code ballot was a Republican ballot. At no time was there ever a Democrat ballot.
That failed.
That failed. That's
Wow.
right.
So I did an interview.
Just coincidence, voting behavior is just it's so random that you can't predict it or use
That's
this kind of analysis to identify patterns, according to J. Alex Halderman. Sorry, Brian.
No, you're good. I did an interview a long time ago, probably about 2 years ago now, with Jeff Lenberg, who was one of the guys that went there and tried to do and this is a guy that I think he worked for Sandusky Labs, top clearance,
Right.
brilliant man, really a big fan.
God-fearing man.
God-fearing man, big time. And, he was telling me on the show that they were trying to figure out how to duplicate that same thing. And they came across a setting in the machine that was like read red, read blue, and I think read green.
Yes.
And if they had it, set to certain parameters for that, it would duplicate it. And so it seems like there's actually ways to, and this should never happen.
No.
That you can set a parameter on the machine, say read red, and it's going to read. And that's the thing, is I don't know what read red, read green, read blue means. And I think I asked him this and he wasn't sure either.
From what I understand, the reason why they had that setting is so that you could mark on the ballots, like you could make notes. And so from what I understood about those 3 settings is that, election officials use different colored pens to mean something. So if they chose red for a reason, then they could use that setting and it would go ahead and read that, and it would ignore the red coloring on the ballot. And so that was one of the, so you could make marks like signatures. If you wanted to have every election judge sign the ballot, then you could still run it and it would, whatever. So that was the purpose of those settings, but we didn't know about that at this time.
So you have this rejection rate you're seeing. It's traditionally, or it's almost every single time, or it is every single time, the 3 Republican candidates that are chosen. What happens then?
It was unbelievable. I mean, it just moved to a screeching halt because of this. And it just keeps going on and on and on. The dude from the Colorado, the Samuel guy, he's like, wipe the machine, blow air on this, do that. And it doesn't work. Why should a $25,000 machine need to be wiped down with a cloth? And it wasn't even a special cloth. It was an old t-shirt.
Oh my gosh.
or blow with cold air. I mean,
Was it an official old t-shirt though?
it may have been. It may have been a Coffee County Trojan t-shirt. Who knows? But I just remember, rag type t-shirt rag. And then they had just cold air that you would use to, clean up your computer screen or whatever. And nothing worked. Finally, Eric Cheney, who at the time was the chairman of the election board, he loses his temper. And I've known Eric since he was in high school because I was one of his teachers. And he loses his temper and he gets in the face of the guy and he says, "You get your boss on the phone." He said, "And I want to speak to him now." So he finally gets him on it. He gets Scott Turner. I think that's his name. Scott Turner. Tucker. Thank you. My brain, after a while, and I've had a stroke, sometimes it just kind of goes, "Eek." So Scott Tucker, he gets him on the phone, puts it on speakerphone, and Eric threatens him. He basically says, "If you don't get this machine fixed in 30 minutes, I'm going to call the press in here and they're going to watch this." And I mean, the Scott guy, he's like, "Are you threatening me?" And Eric's like, "No, I'm promising you." So the Samuel guy goes outside. He finishes whatever his conversation is. We're standing around like twiddling our thumbs. And finally he meanders back into the room and he's all excited. He's bouncing on his toes. I mean, acting like he's on a sugar high or something, and he's like, "You need to wipe down the machine again. I know this is going to work. We've got the work in." And now Misty was adamant they were not to touch the machine. They were not to touch a ballot. They were not to, and when I mean by they, the Dominion reps, Misty was going to touch everything. And she doesn't let him touch anything. And he's standing right there with his smartphone. And he's like, "Just wipe the machine down one more time. I know this is going to work." And she's like, oh. So she just kind of haphazardly just wipes the machine. And I mean, no big deal. She just wipes it. And all of a sudden, the machine takes every ballot every single time, no problems. And we finish running all the ballots.
Yeah, they remote fixed it.
Yeah. And it was like, we're exhausted. It's like 1:00 in the morning. We're wiped out. And, but Eric is like, "Did we just see what we saw?" He says, "What do you," and I'm like, "It seems like something was downloaded or something, Miss Ernestine, the Democrat, she's like, "This doesn't seem right." She's like, "This isn't right." We're just all just like floored by this, but we're exhausted. We're exhausted at this time. But that's what happened that night. And
They're
it
totally
was surreal. Huh?
They're totally air
Yeah.
gapped though, so that can't happen.
Yeah.
There is no connectivity with these machines. So
I love an air
it
game.
had to maybe what happened, Kathy, maybe you guys got 100% cotton shirt instead of a polyester blend. And
Maybe.
that's why the lens
Did you
worked.
use the same shirt to wipe it down the second time? or
Yes,
the
Misty
last
did
time?
not go get a new rag. I mean, it was just, and I mean, she just like, "Yeah, right. This is not going to work,
Yeah.
And why would wiping a machine finally for the 100th time that night work?
Yeah. And one of the key things that I think people need to understand is when you said earlier about the 3 Republicans rejecting all of them, is this was the runoff race. So there were only 3 races on there. It wasn't like the primary and the other race where there was a full ballot's worth.
Right.
And you can't go through and look and see what could have potentially been triggering this. So in the runoff, it was kind of like an expose because you could see that there's only 3 races on there. And it's not hard to look and say like all Republican. Okay. All Republican. Okay. And then the Democrat one actually goes through. So, that was actually a blessing in disguise. I think there's a lot of things. I've talked about John Eastman's speech on January 6th at the Capitol where, or at the Ellipse,
Right.
where he was saying, they got to watch the runoff in real time and saw what had happened. And, one of the things I've written about extensively is the QR code signature mismatch that was discovered in Williamson County, Tennessee, and also discovered David Cross and myself and Kevin Moncla. And, we've all discovered that in Georgia as well.
Right.
But we never got any resolution to it. We never got any investigation into it. But we had several places that had evidence of potentially that happened. Floyd County, 4,000 ballots have popped up out of nowhere during the hand count. And if there is a QR code signature mismatch, the machines would probably respond the way yours did in Coffee County, just rejecting it. And who knows if a ballot is being stored in some sort of a provisional folder that can be accessed remotely later on, the same way they did to repair the machine and finagle results. I mean, the bottom line is these machines are like wildly compromised. They cannot be trusted.
That's correct.
Yeah, and I would just say the story doesn't have to make sense long term. It just an event, right? So you guys were exhausted. It was 1, 2 in the morning. This is weird. It doesn't make sense. But man, we've been doing that. We've been here since 5 a.m. We gotta get out of here. Everybody goes to sleep. They didn't go to sleep. They worked that problem all night and figured out how to tell that story and sell the story of what happened to the people. And when those guys needed to sleep, the next batch of people came in. This is my opinion, of course, based on the information available to us. But that is a big part. We see this over and over again around the country. There is a splash story that's made. It's kind of a wrap-up smear. Right. But the handling of the narrative, when it comes down to you guys telling this story, well, hang on a second. All they did was they tell us to wipe it. And then the whole problem was solved. It looks very much like they remotely fixed this machine. That's weird. They're not supposed to do that because air gap. And then what happens? Well, you get RICO investigated and indicted, and you get character assassinated, and you get those election deniers are just trying to steal elections again. And nobody actually looks at the fact that they remotely fixed your freaking machine.
Right. And, the thing is I already had testified in the Senate hearing about what we had seen, because remember, Coffee County doesn't certify the machine recount. We only certify the hand recount, because the machine recount, they couldn't even get it to take at one time 44 ballots and then another 180 ballots, etc. There was all kinds of problems. And even the Democrat refused to certify the election. So you had both parties there sitting there going, there's something wrong. And they told me the next day, I get the phone call, hey, we didn't certify. And I'm like, okay, what does that mean? They said, we didn't certify. And all we could certify was the hand count, because the hand count, you were just looking at the paper ballots. So they certified the hand count.
So, okay. So let's fast forward a little bit now to where, you guys reach out for help and ultimately end up bringing in Jeff Lenberg, Doug Logan. They come in and are able to, Misty is able to get a forensic image so that they can do some assessment and figure out what the heck went wrong. One of the things that nobody ever mentions when they're talking about the image that was made in Coffee County is that there was a litigation hold on those machines, and that they had to take the image and put it in, I can't remember the company's name, but basically an evidentiary custodian.
Sullivan Strickler, I believe, was the name. Yeah. Yep.
And they took that image, they put the image, in Sullivan Strickler, they lock it up in a vault so that it can be preserved for, any court cases. And I think this was Sidney Powell and Lynn Wood that had requested that, 2 separate cases, I believe. But yeah, walk us through, what happened from there.
Well, I was never aware of Lenberg and Logan coming to Coffee County. I was kept out of that loop. That was something that the Board of Elections, whoever did. I find out later when I start getting phone calls about them being here, because at the time when I heard the term Cyber Ninja, I didn't know that was a name of a company. I thought it was a term for somebody who was good with a computer. And people were calling me. I mean, I would get these weird phone calls like from the New York Times and stuff, not knowing they were coming from somebody with curling case who had been filtering information. I don't know this at the time. But I'm getting these phone calls about, hey, can you tell us about a team of cyber ninjas that came to November 2020 election? And I'm like, I have no idea what you're talking about. Because at this point, I don't know what's going on. And as we're moving towards June of 2021, I know I'm about to retire, and I'm going to move my tail back to Texas, because that had been my plan for decades. And that's the only reason why I married my husband. He said we could go home. And So I knew in 2021 in June, I was not running in the GOP anymore. And so I'm kind of untangling myself from the politics at this point. So I'm not privy to some of the things happening even in the county election wise. So I don't know any of this. And these people are calling me and I'm like, what are you talking about? It's not till later that I find out about the cyber ninjas. But I mean, I knew that a team came down into Coffee County. I found out the day they came down what they were doing. But at first I thought they were coming only to watch the scanning and to possibly scan some of the ballots. And, you know, the Board of Elections knew about that and et cetera. And I showed up that day. I know they have pictures of me opening the doors and said I welcomed the team in and stuff. But I mean, it's called Southern manners. When somebody asks me to open the door, I open the door. I was in the foyer. You know, there's 2 front doors. There were to that building. They destroyed the building. I didn't know if y'all knew that in Coffee County. They blasted the building that no longer exists. But there were 2 front doors, very confusing to anybody who showed up. So I opened the door, welcomed them in, you know, just like anybody with good manners would do, you know.
Did somebody ask you to do that? To
Misty,
go open the door? Misty
did. She said, would you open the door?
Election supervisor.
Yeah. I was in the foyer. I was there to adjudicate because we were trying, each day I was showing up there to adjudicate, sign off on the ballots. And there was such a working relationship that if Misty said, or even Miss Ernestine, because she worked up there too, and she was the Democrat. If they said, we've already adjudicated these, do you mind coming by and signing them? I would just kind of glance and sign. We worked so well that we all trusted each other. You know, that's important. You know, we trusted each other. And so, you know, I was showing up there almost every day just to help finish out the election. Did we get these ballots cured? Did we do this? You know, did all the Unicava come through? All that kind of stuff. You know, it's just making sure all the I's are dotted, T's are crossed before Friday at noon, I believe is the deadline. So when this happens there, you know, it's just every day. It happened in the middle of the day in downtown Douglas. I mean, nobody was hiding. We knew there's cameras there. There was nothing nefarious going on.
Yeah, but they put out the I think it was New York Times put out Lenberg and Logan walking in, closed circuit television cameras, which automatically makes it look like something mischievous. It's like, oh, look, we caught them on surveillance cameras walking in broad daylight, right? In broad daylight with his laptop. He's got, or not laptop, he's got a bag with a couple monsters in it and whatever the case might be. It was so stupid. But so from there, what happened? You guys end up, like, how did you know that you were going to eventually be a part of this case?
Gosh, man, I got to really think of the timeline on that. I think the first indication that something was happening was all the emails and phone calls I was getting about Coffee County. And then the Fonnie Willis stuff hit the fan because I was also an elector. So that's what gave them their little RICO chain. Was I was not only an elector, I was in the Coffee County thing. And we have the curling case and those people to thank for that, in my opinion, about how all this meshed together. And it basically started with the elector stuff, and then the curling, they grabbed onto the elector stuff, and that's how they got their toe in the door to start their new. Because didn't she get another year, or didn't the case get another year for curling because of Coffee County? Didn't they get an extension or something?
I don't remember specifically, but I know it was heard in January of 2023. And again, you know, sitting through that trial, everything was, they always had to mention that, well, the images are now out in the wild from Coffee County, and like anything can be done. And it's like, well, these machines are supposed to be air gapped, and that means you would have to have physical access to them, and you know, all this other stuff. None of that ever got brought up. But yeah, I don't remember if Coffee somehow afforded them another year or anything.
I think it gave them an extra. I think Totenberg gave them more time because of the coffee stuff. So it worked to their advantage to make this bigger than what it was. And I know somebody within that case bragged about how they turned all that evidence over to Fonnie Willis, and they bragged about it on Twitter at the time too. So
Whoa.
we still have those tweets, by the way.
Hey, good, good.
Yeah, because it was Twitter at that point. So, but yeah, where was I going with this? Now I'm getting the brain fog. I can't even remember. Y'all have
Well,
to for me with that question.
Yeah, we were talking about when you found out that you were going to be a part of this, and you were saying because you were an elector.
It started first with the electors because, you know, that's what Fonnie Willis was saying. She was going to go after Trump and his phone call and stuff. And then it became the elector stuff. Then it became the curling case. And then it became the indictment. And they linked me as the chain for the RICO. And they didn't understand.
Well, you did open the door.
I did open the door it really makes me think now when I open the door for somebody, I'm like, okay, am I going to get in trouble for this? You know, just so
they used
this.
Yeah, they used to train, and I don't know if they still do. I'm sure they probably still do, but in corporate America, used to train on like tailgating, right? And that you can be liable for the company having real harm if you're not very careful about who you allow into the building.
Right. Yeah. So, you know, it just makes you think sometimes who you're letting in when you open the door.
Yeah.
But yeah, it became this whole thing about, and it really started with Fonnie Willis and her investigation into Trump and the phone call. Then we got the emails from the GOP that they were coming after the electors. And at the time, I wasn't even one of the electors they were really focusing in on until the curling case came out. And somebody in the curling case sent reporters to my house, and then it blew up. So, yeah.
So what, you know, from a personal level, what was the experience having to go through this, seeing your name? I mean, you've been an upstanding citizen, you were a teacher, you know, and you were the GOP chair. You're just a hardworking woman, you know, trying to make your way through, and you get rolled up in this, one of the biggest cases in the country at that time, because it involved a former president and front runner for the Republican nomination. You know, what was that like for you?
It was devastating. Remember, I'm just a retired school teacher. I had a retirement plan I was teaching online with the Georgia Virtual High School. I was almost teaching full-time there. I had a side career where I wrote curriculum. In fact, right before the indictments came down, I was able to finish co-authoring 2 economic textbooks. And as soon as I was indicted and my mugshot and everything splashed, my entire career collapsed. I mean, I couldn't even get a job seriously walking a dog. I got fired from walking a dog because they found out who I was.
Character assassination.
Character assassination. Yeah.
That's the power of narrative.
And, you know, my daughter had a bar at the time here in Texas, and I was working part-time there. I had to stop working right before the indictments, you know, because I couldn't hurt her bar, you know, but she ended up selling it anyway. So that became a godsend. But, you know, it was just things like that. You know, we lost a house because of it, because the mortgage company found out who I was, you know, so therefore I was a risk. You know, we lost our earnest money because of that. My husband couldn't go with me when I had to turn myself into Fulton County because he worked at the time for a woke company. And if they had found out, you know, he was with me. So my sister took me to Fulton County, you know. It was that kind of stuff. I mean, it was devastating to be this, and they treated me like collateral damage. Like, so what? You know, nobody cared that innocent people got caught up in this entire thing. You think about the lives ruined. I mean, just within some of the electors and stuff, just some of the lawyers, what they've done to them. It's atrocious that our own people have treated us this way.
Our government that exists allegedly based on the consent of the governed, that cannot operate without that. So what do? They steal elections, in my opinion. And anybody that asks questions about it gets their lives destroyed. And the net effect of that is that people won't ask questions anymore. That's what we see. Right. when there's, one of these cases.
And then to find
There
out
must
that
be accountability.
to find out that Arctic frost started because they were targeting the electors.
Yep.
But one of the things I think that makes me the maddest over this are our fellow Republicans who kept their mouths shut, the rhinos. I'm going to use, for example, once I moved to Texas and all of this happened, I contacted my senator, Cruz. Do you think he cared one bit that one of his constituents was caught up in this? Absolutely not. But when did he get mad? When he found out his name was in Arctic frost and they tried to get his stuff. But he doesn't care that one of his own constituents had their emails seized, their phone records seized.
No, Cathy, because he votes for the authorizations for the government to be able to surveil you in that way. They only get authentically angry when it's about themselves.
Yep.
Yeah. It's that our own people, the people that should be protecting us, they kept their mouths shut. And it reminds me of that poem that came from the Holocaust. They came for the Jews and I stayed quiet because I wasn't a Jew. Then they came for the homosexuals and I stayed quiet because I wasn't a homosexual. It's almost like that. As long as they weren't being picked on, they kept quiet. But they allowed our American citizens to be railroaded. And we shouldn't be doing that. We're all Americans. Why can't we get along?
Because we got to vote them out, Cathy. We got to vote out the people that are.
And we got to primary. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm working really hard primarying rhinos. I mean, we have some around where I live, and they vote with Democrats 50% of the time. Yeah. And we are trying to get rid of them right now. It's just horrible.
Hopefully we can get a real mechanism to vote and, have the will of the people reflected in the outcomes of elections. Yeah. Not holding my breath, but we are closer than we've ever been.
Right.
So.
I'm looking at Dallas County right now, and they're doing the paper ballots during their Republican primary. And in fact, they came to me to hire me and then realized I might be a little too toxic for them. So they didn't hire me. I don't know.
Even now, you should be squeaky clean now.
Well, this was about a couple months ago. So, but now it's getting too close. So I wish them luck and everything, what they're doing. I'm hoping and praying that they're successful in doing the paper ballots and stuff, because everybody's watching them because they're a large county. So,
we had them on one of our morning shows a couple weeks ago to try and, solicit people to volunteer.
Yep.
And
it helped. They got 1,000 volunteers from what I understand.
Nice.
So, excellent.
Yeah. It is making a difference. So yes, thank you for that.
Excellent. Because that's the key right there is the primaries are key. The primaries are more important than the general election in several jurisdictions, in most jurisdictions where it's, predominantly Republican, predominantly Democrat. The primary is where you're going to root out the establishment rhinos, the people that really just don't give a shit about you. They're more there for their own self benefit. Yes. And so, being able to have hand marked paper ballots, hand counted for primaries, I would take that over, if you gave me a choice between the two, I would take that over the general election, 10 times out of 10.
Right.
So, all right. So is there anything we missed, Cathy, that you want to?
Well, I know that a lot of us are trying to piece our lives back together. I mean, some people were lucky; they got jobs within the administration and things like that. But there's, people are still trying to piece their lives together. And I mean, I can't imagine what Tina's going to have to go through when she finally gets released. There's a lot of J6ers that have had their lives destroyed. All of this. We've got to come together as a people and help each other. And
we have to help each other. We also need to hold those people accountable.
Yes, we do.
This is so asymmetrical. When you look at the Summer of Love in 2020 and the level of actual violence that was done in American communities, insurrection-y type conduct, those guys have occupied the Capitol, right? Those guys have set government buildings on fire.
Yep.
There's nobody that even comes close. Nobody's justice, scare quotes, has come even close to what they're doing to Tina Peters or what they did to J6ers or what they did to you. And, you know, the stories are way too many. And I always in my mind go back, I think about it at least once a week to that article. Brian, you'll remember the Atlantic article. We need to declare a pandemic amnesty.
Yep.
It's like the worst people in the world demonized anyone that wouldn't get the vaccine, wouldn't wear a mask, that questioned the science. Oh, but you know, we mistakes were made. Yep. We just need to move on. No, we're not doing the mistakes were made. We just need to move on this time because the whole of the government came together to demonize half the population. And now they want to just say, oh, no harm, no foul. Absolutely not. I do not believe that we can move forward into a golden age when we have this massive debt to the American people and we don't have free and fair elections yet. No, and the people who have done the harm are still A, walking around free, and B, a lot of them are still taking government salaries.
Yeah. Well, and there are some people who have committed sedition and treason.
Yeah.
And why are they not standing trial? I'm ready to start. Now, I don't want to be haphazard about it. And I have said it. I've posted about it. You don't just throw a net and gather them up. That's not it needs to be legal. It needs to be fair, etc. But it is now time for people to have to stand up and say what their role was and be held accountable.
Like you're saying, with due process, I'm 100% in agreement with you. We want due process. We want the rights of the accused protected. But this two-tiered system in America where there's a group of people, and it's not just the governing class, because the governing class is a public-private partnership, right? Yep. So there is this tier of people that have. Some of them have qualified immunity. Some of them just have really powerful friends, but they never get held accountable. And they're, you know, like I think about Mark Elias. Mark Elias was just arguing in front of the U.S. Supreme Court this week. Why is he not in prison?
Oh, he and a couple other of those. Their fingerprints are all over this, and they're all over the Georgia case. They collaborated with that entire case and their fingerprints are all over it. So they need to be held accountable.
And lawfare is a crime. It's at a minimum for the attorneys engaging in it. It's a violation of the rules and violation of the codes of professional conduct. All of those reasons why we trust, well, this is a very professional system and we have standards and we have rules and we have codes of professional conduct. They'll break them all the time. And nobody holds them accountable. And we see that really in a very crystallized way with like Mark Elias and Norm Eisen and the architects of using the law, using the courts to engage in political gamesmanship and harm. That has gone on too long. I think it's gone on for decades, but it's been in the age of Trump, it's really been brought to the forefront.
Right.
And that needs to be dealt with. The only way you're going to deal with that is if the courts and the, professional associations begin to hold the people accountable, begin to actually, when you have a frivolous case brought in front of you, but, it's a Trump supporter, so it's fine. When you have a frivolous case, actually issuing sanctions for the frivolity, show it when there's abuse of process, holding people accountable for abuse of process almost never happens. Where does it happen? John Eastman, Jeff Clark. That's where they decide that, we have standards and we have codes, but Mark Elias and Norm Eisen, where's the standards and codes for those guys?
Right. If I had done a 10th of what they accused me of, even in my field of education, I would have been fired and stripped of everything, because we have a code of ethics. And if I had violated that code of ethics, they could have buried me. But, we've got to hold these people accountable. And it's important.
Yeah. And, teaching is a position of public trust. I came out of the consulting world, but it was for an SEC audit firm. And in an SEC audit firm, you have, and this is statute, this is the law, you have to be independent. You cannot be auditing a company that you're also invested in, right? It seems basic, but the same kind of structures, the independence frameworks, and the way that we ensure that corruption can't infiltrate positions of public trust, that doesn't exist in government. They're all insider trading. They're developing laws that benefit themselves and their friends and their biggest donors and their family members, and nobody can hold them accountable because they've declared themselves immune.
Yep.
All right, Cathy. Again, congratulations.
Yeah,
thank you.
I'm so glad to hear, for all of you guys. I told Harrison last week, I said, low key, I was like mildly disappointed because I knew that if that case went the distance, it would have been discovered that Trump won Georgia. And so while I'm so glad for all of you guys, I wanted to see that case come to fruition. And I told Ashe the day that there was the first hearing on subpoenas for evidence, I told Ashe, I said, this case will never go the
it
distance.
did.
And
Well, they didn't want even just what I could have brought to them.
Right.
Just my part of it. They wouldn't want that coming to the light.
Yep.
So,
Because everything about Georgia's 2020 election was absolute poop. It was absolute poop. So, good.
all right, good.
All right, Cathy, where can people follow you online?
Well, my Facebook is shut down in the fact that I only let friends and family be on that. But I'm on Twitter, and I can't remember what my handle was because I hid on there for the longest time. But they can find me at Cathy with a C, M.A. Latham. And I write about my story all the time. I talk about what it was like going through the hallways of Fulton County. And I actually met some really nice people in Fulton County. They were very kind to me when I had my mugshot. My pre-servicing counselor, she was so sweet to me this entire time. So that, I write about it. I write about different things. I even write about what teaching, etc. So I'm on X as Cathy M.A. Latham. So if they want to follow me, come on. And I'm hoping someday to get my book written and maybe everybody will read it. There it is. Yep. There
Good
I am.
headshot.
Thank you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
very good.
So,
all right. Well, Cathy, again, congratulations. God bless. And thanks for coming on the show.
thank you so much. And y'all too. And have a Merry Christmas. And I hope you feel
Merry
better.
Christmas.
And I love all those herbs. I'm doing a lot of herbs to help heal from my stroke. So, and my doctor is so impressed. So I'm glad y'all are pushing the tinctures and stuff. So
absolutely.
Awesome. All right. Take care.
Thank you.
Oh, did not mean to.
Way to go, Brian. It was rude.
I didn't realize, but okay. So
she's awesome.
Very awesome. Yeah. She was a rock star, man. Like the hell that they put these people through, man. Her, Misty Hampton, obviously Travion and Harrison and Mike Roman, Sidney Powell, all these people, they just destroyed.
And that's Georgia, right?
That's
and we
Georgia.
can apply the same to Pennsylvania and Leah and Greg and Michigan and Matt, right? DePerno and, Arizona. Think of all the people who have been attacked by the government in Arizona. The net effects of the season since the 2020 election has been that if you question the government will character assassinate you, ruin your life, and probably put you in prison if you don't stop. And that's a level of tyranny that we shouldn't have in this country, and they shouldn't have the ability to impact that kind of, I think about Dana Nessel and just the way that the statements she made, the way she went after her political opponents for and the narratives, right? The narratives of how awful and terrible questioning elections is. Questioning elections has happened since 1800, documented. But in the age of President Trump, questioning elections was basically treason.
Yep.
You can't question the mechanism by which we gain our power. It's insanity. And we're in a better place than we were even just a year ago, but we're not out of this yet. And we're not going to reclaim the ability to confer our consent. We're not going to reclaim that by not telling the truth. And that's this idea that we're gonna half measure our way to some sort of normal again, it's not going to work. We have to be all the way honest about our elections if we're going to ever have actual elections.
Yeah. And the next regime, without President Trump, without the potential of another President Trump, who knows what's going to happen, from that moment on, if we don't fix it now. If we don't fix it, we've, like I said, we've got maybe just over 3 years left to get remedy on this. And if we don't, who knows what's going to happen. So,
yeah.
All right. So that'll do it. You want to talk about the Tina on OnlyLands?
Yeah, we can talk about Tina on OnlyLands. If folks want the latest, you can find it on my X or on coloradofreepress.com. I'm going to put my latest article up on my Substack later today as well. So by the time this airs, it'll probably be up.
Okay.
I'll commit to it. I'll commit to putting it up by the time this airs, so it will be up. But yeah, there's some interesting things happening, and there's multiple paths to multiple proposed paths to Tina getting out of prison or getting moved from Colorado prison into federal custody. There's multiple paths being explored. It does appear that the administration is looking at them and doing, I would argue, doing everything that they can. Right. We had the pardon happened yesterday by President Trump. It's not legally, it holds no legal authority over state crimes. That's what's going to be argued. It's said that it's going to go up to the Supreme Court. We'll see what happens, but that just happening, right? The pardon happening has reshaped some of the narrative that's happening here. And it's causing people to ask questions, which is great. I love the idea of this 10th Amendment question coming before the Supreme Court. I think, I said this earlier in the week, but I think that the path there, if it does go to the Supreme Court, the question of whether the president can pardon state level crimes, I think they ruled that he can't, which actually for the American people is a good thing, right? Because we don't want the federal government to have the level of power to subvert our states in that way. At least I don't, right? I'm a 10th Amendment believer. But so it helps that outcome would help the American people, but it wouldn't help Tina get out. But it seems like from some of the stuff that, came up and I reported this morning, again, coloradofreepress.com, it seems that there's a different path to get her moved. So interesting all around. And, I'm excited about it.
All right.
I want to talk about soft disclosure real quick before we get out of here, because I talked to a woman yesterday who was crying because of soft disclosure healing her eczema, which is just we talk a lot about the intentionality of the soft disclosure products and how every ingredient has a specific purpose for your skin, not for the profit margin of the product, not to, expand the yield on each batch or anything like that, but that every single ingredient, there's no filler. Every single ingredient is, it's focused on nourishing and supplementing what your skin needs. And so that's fantastic. And hearing the personal stories is incredible. If you have personal stories, please send them to me, AsheAmerica at protonmail.com. I'd love to hear your stories, but everybody should try, especially if you have any sort of skin issue, trying the goat's milk lotion is what I was really touched listening to a story of how it's healing long-term skin issues. It's fantastic. Softdisclosure.com, promo code Badlands.
All right. I am going to lay down and pass out for the next 4 hours until I have to go to this concert. So I will see.
You're going to a concert? Oh my gosh. See, you're sick. As a mom, I would tell you cannot go. You cannot go to the concert because you are sick, and you will get sicker if you go to a concert.
Christy bought the tickets for her parents, and they bought 2 tickets for us to go with them. And I have to go. I convinced them to come over here for pizza before the concert so I don't have to go to dinner. But if I don't go, Christy will never let me hear the end of it. So
take your elderberry syrup and your super immune tincture, badlandsmedia.tv/Tamarac, everyone. And get better.
Yeah.
I don't like it when you're sick. You're all doomy and like bummed out. I don't like it.
My head is like pounding right now. Yeah. So I'm out.
Right.
See you guys.
Soft disclosure, just dropped new favorites for the season. The lotion, your 5-ounce favorite, is still here. And now we've added full 11-ounce bottles. New, Lavender Tea Tree Deodorant. Clean, calm, and effective. New tallow bars. Chamomile Lemon Rose and Naked. Rich moisture that actually works. And now, the lineup is complete. Beard oil in unscented and spiced vanilla. Palo lip balms. Available in chamomile mint, vanilla, naked, and vanilla tangerine. Palo Bar Minis for pocket-ready hydration. Available in vanilla coffee and naked. And finally, lavender vanilla lotion. Clean, calm, and made to work. Visit softdisclosure.com. Use code Badlands and get 15% off. Soft Disclosure. For truth you can